What's up, guys? Josh Pate here from 24/7 Sports. That's Steve Wiltfong, National Director of Recruiting, weekly Wiltfong Recruiting Whiparound time. And Steve, it looks like, looking to my left and right, it may actually be spatula season after all. Decommitment wave finally feels like it's starting with a couple of weeks to go before the early signing date. What's the latest? A lot of big names going back on the market here.
I think we're at 300 decommitments in this 2021 cycle and counting because, as you said, it is spatula season. A couple big decommitments last night. Let's start with the biggest one, the number one inside linebacker in the 24/7 Sports composite player rankings, Terrance Lewis out of Miami Central High School down there in South Florida. And our local insider on it, national insider Andrew Ivins, projects that Auburn and Texas A&M are in the best shape. Talked to a couple sources this morning, and if that's the case, I really like where the Auburn Tigers stand for Lewis moving forward. And Auburn could use some good news because the next name is Armani Goodwin, who is a top 100 prospect himself, number 93 player overall in the 24/7 Sports composite player rankings. He decommitted from Auburn after a long time commitment with the Tigers. Talked to his head coach last night. I think that Auburn, he could still end up back in the fold for Auburn, so maybe not a spatula for Armani. But LSU and Florida State are two other programs that have done a good job with Armani. And before I get into LSU real quick, you say people are like Florida State, they're struggling. They certainly are struggling. But if you go to Memphis's track record under Mike Norvell at the running back position and players drafted, and you look at Barton Simmons' story earlier this fall, Memphis, I think, was third under Mike Norvell's watch as far as running backs drafted during his time at Memphis. So they kind of became in the conversation of RBU, and that's probably helping them with Armani Goodwin down there in Tallahassee. But my eyes are on LSU, Baton Rouge. They have a good relationship with Armani. They have a good relationship with his mom. And I think that report has LSU in the thick of it. Will Armani sign in December? That's up in the air too. I'm told perhaps that one goes to February now. And if that's the case, I think you could see maybe even Alabama come into that one if that one stretches out to February.
So looking up and down just the top 247 in general, and maybe even expanding beyond that, Steve, I mean, like you said, we are a couple of weeks away now from that early signing date. What has your focus the most, maybe just aside from the decommits we just talked about?
Well, another decommitment this week was Caughtmeyer, the four-star quarterback from Starkville, Mississippi. This is a guy that grew up rooting for Mississippi State, but was a long-time commitment to Florida State. But he had only gotten a chance to visit Tallahassee twice, he said, and they were just 2-day trips. And with COVID and all that, he wasn't able to take visits and just wasn't able to get more comfortable with Florida State. Meanwhile, he's been to Ole Miss's last 2 wins. Matt Corral threw for over 500 yards against South Carolina. He was there for that. He was there for the victory in the Egg Bowl this past week. I think he's going to be the first quarterback to commit to Lane Kiffin and company. I expect that to happen sometime later this week. But if we just pull up the 24/7 Sports player rankings and just kind of have like a buffet of what's going on there, you have Emeka Egbuka, 5-star receiver, visiting Oklahoma this weekend. He's been trying to get to Norman for months. Brandon Huffman, national analyst for 24/7 Sports, broke that news yesterday. That's the last hurdle for Ohio State to land Emeka Egbuka. But Egbuka is going to go to Norman, and it's going to be like that Sooner Summit in the summer. He's going to get a chance to spend a lot of time with guys committed to Oklahoma, strongly considering Oklahoma. Another prospect strongly considering Oklahoma is Tristan Lee, the 5-star offensive tackle, who locked in his decision date over the weekend. He's going to announce on January 2nd on the All-America Bowl announcement special on NBC. And I really like where way things are trending for Oklahoma there. Talking to people around Lee, and talked to another source yesterday that said that they'd be surprised if Oklahoma didn't get him. LSU, Ohio State, Florida, Clemson, some of the other major contenders there. Texas A&M is going to be a team that's going to be fun to follow. The stretch run, they're in on several big-time defensive linemen. Tanezi Adelaide, who was at Alabama this past weekend for the Iron Bowl. I think the Aggies were the one to beat for him going into that visit to Alabama. Haven't heard anything different yet that they're not. And Shamar Turner out of DeSoto, Texas, talking to some sources around that high school. they said Texas A&M was the slight leader for him. Texas A&M's looking for a third straight top 10 recruiting class under Jimbo Fisher and company. They're also way in it for Brian Thomas, the number 2 receiver in the top 247 player rankings. His final 3 is Alabama, LSU, and Texas A&M. He told me last week he didn't know if he would sign in December or February, but I could see A&M also landing him. Back to Ole Miss, Tywan Malone. I talked to a source last night that spent a lot of time around Bergen Catholic this year up there in Ordell, New Jersey. They continue to tell me Ole Miss is in pole position for the number 56 player overall in the 24/7 Sports Composite. So Lane Kiffin, Ole Miss, I wouldn't be surprised if they hurtle all the way into the top 25. They would finally move into the top 50 with a Luke Caughtmeyer commitment, but they have a chance to really surge with what's left on the board for them. Xavier Story recently put out his announcement date for December 16th. I still am getting a Georgia-Florida vibe for that one. I like the Bulldogs and Kirby Smart for Story until someone tells me differently. Bryce Foster, coveted offensive lineman from Texas, Oklahoma, A&M. I really liked Oklahoma back in the spring. I'm now thinking that that's a toss-up, the way A&M's playing, the way Coach Henson's getting his offensive linemen to play at such a high level. I think that's real attractive to Bryce Foster, who has so many Texas A&M ties. I think that this season, more than any other school, has maybe helped Texas A&M with the way they're playing. Remington Strickland's another offensive lineman that A&M's battling Oklahoma for, and so it'll be interesting to see what both those young men do. But I think that's a toss-up after thinking Oklahoma was going to get both of them at one point. You got Nyland Green. He's trying to make a decision soon. Clemson's surging there. We talked about that last week. Georgia had the slight edge per source last week, but Tennessee's still in there. Clemson pushing hard. Sierra Wright, he's visiting Notre Dame this weekend, top 100 corner, the number 1 corner out west. USC, they're another team. They moved up to number 7 in the 24/7 Sports recruiting rankings yesterday with their spatula of Kyron Ware-Hudson. Sierra Wright would be part of a potentially big finish for the Trojans, but Notre Dame gets their swing after Michigan got their lick earlier this month. And that's just the top 100, Josh. We could go all day.
Yeah, and remember, I mean, like you said, just a little over 2 weeks at this point away from that early signing date. So there's going to be a lot of movement, going to be a lot of rumors, a lot of whispers that you want to come here to have confirmed or dispelled. Steve Wiltfong, it is the weekly Wiltfong Recruiting Whip Around. The world needs it now more than ever, sir. I'll see you next week.